Alright, dear friends, I'm glad to meet you all on Feygin Live. It is Tuesday, 14th of June, 2 minutes past 10 Kiev time, and we're doing day 111 with Olexiy Arestovych. Good evening, Olexiy. As usual, before we start, I ask you to share the links to this stream. Share it in your social networks with your friends. Make sure everybody who needs to see that stream sees it. Subscribe to our channels. If you are watching that cast in English, subscribe to Privateer Station. Alright, Olexiy. The mic is yours. Situation is pretty strenuous, so let's go over that. Okay, so on Kharkov in the north, Russian troops are trying to push down from the north, get their ass beaten a little, and go back. Then Izum, it was very active in Izum area today. They tried to go to Slavyansk. Left, right, the situation is very fluid and changing, but they were kicked back in a couple of tactical directions. They actually rolled back on Liman. That group is trying to get to Raigorodok, but they have to cross Seversky Donets there, and that will be an obstacle. They were trying to get from Ozorna to Kryvye Luki, and there is the problem with the river crossing. They are trying to avoid the mistake of Belogorovka, where they were entirely destroyed, and try to cross the river in several places on a wide front. It is an interesting tactic because they may end up having several situations like Belogorovka instead of one, because our artillery is doing there pretty well. But we'll see. Severodonetsk, they were fighting for Metelkina, which is to the southeast of it. In the city itself, they're running and shooting each other, hitting it with artillery and aviation. But there was a lot of effort they exerted down near Toshevka, near Kamyshevacha. Some sources say that Russian troops got beaten back, others say that we got beaten, but we did not retreat. So if you are following the map and if you have enough power to follow it there in details, the main attempt is really cut the road Bakhmut-Lysychansk, and that is for over 60 days already. They also tried to advance towards Bakhmut and tried to get to road M3 to cut another road to Bakhmut. Same tasks, same E2, E4 chess game, throwing more meat into the grinder. I, of course, knew a lot about the Second World War, but now I actually understood a lot about World War II, observing how does the Russian army fight. I was thinking about that yesterday, but I think it's about time to speak about it today. Some of us were thinking we're good experts in war, but before the war, but it is hard to obtain an experience of a full-fledged continental warfare. You cannot get it anywhere. So the first weeks was pretty intense, and I was suspecting we might lose, but I was really curious to see how does the Russian army think, how do they fight, and how do they work with reality. And I remember my curiosity when I was observing and making conclusions. I'm still observing that now, but it opened my eyes onto many things about Afghanistan, Angola, Ethiopia, Hungary and Czechoslovakia, Second World War. Comrade Putin did not understand several things in this war. First, he is not Stalin. Second, he doesn't have 27 to 30 million troops army. Third, he's lacking Lend-Lease. Lend-Lease is on the other side. Although Stalin did not have so much modern weaponry and so many stooges in Europe, so that's somewhat a balancing. In Vasilievka, Russians were beaten back, including with artillery. It is another artillery day today. There are a lot of targets hit, not even worth counting them all. I can read some that were already published in open channels, but there are more that are still verified and not released. You can find that in government Telegram channels. Arkhangelskaya, we destroyed their Russian MLRS system. Near Blakitne shut up. The ammo depot was exploding for over an hour. Airplane Davida Brod, Alexandrovka, Novodmitrievka shot down a helicopter also. And that's just Kherson region. And then there's also Izum, Lysychansk, Zaporozhye, and others. So in Kherson, there are more artillery duels today. According to what I have now, there was not much infantry movement, which shows that the moment we have artillery working, we have good success and good luck on the front. When we don't, situation gets dire. So I can only repeat: weapons, 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 ammo, ammo, ammo. By the way, we have an achievement today. Today we shot down 2 missiles, Onyx class. It is a supersonic missile and pretty hard to hit, but it is a beautiful achievement of our defense system. So, among others, we managed. Same fighting in same places, artillery duels mostly won by us because we have ammo, weapons, and professionalism. I've been talking that for a while. I had several interviews in world-level media. This week was busy. They were taking interviews before Rammstein, and they're all relaying to the words of Michael Podolyak, saying that 1,000 howitzers, where do we get that from? Well, even NATO doesn't have it. You do. NATO has, but even 120 that we have, look at what we're doing. Kherson group is not even dreaming to advance, even though they're trying and they're actually reinforced. So I understand 1,000 howitzers is a bit difficult, but if they added another 300, then all Russian battalion groups and all restocked special forces and airborne troopers. By the way, 14th Brigade of Special Forces in mass refused to go to the front. We would have stopped them dead in their tracks. They would not advance anywhere if we had that. So maybe because Podolyak was relying on the ask for more, you'll be given less. That's why he's using the number 1,000. Or is 300 a real number? This is an ideal number that would allow us to destroy his army in 2 months completely and throw them beyond the border. Any other number below that is different. It'll take us more time. We'll still kick him and get them out, but it'll take longer. By the way, Scholz spoke today again. He was promising more things. He's doing it daily. He reminds me of myself when I was 14. When I was going to a first date, I also promised my girlfriend to give her the world, and yeah, didn't keep my word, didn't keep my promise. Were the girls older? No, they were the same age. Yeah, the older ones would have completely gotten that out of you. So yeah, sorry, Natasha. But Scholz really reminds me of myself back in 14. Promised a lot of things and didn't deliver much. So I think this is somewhat related with their visits. So how does that work? Tell us more. Well, they're kind of cautious about announcing when they're arriving because, you know, Putin is an unpredictable fella who might hit them with that Onyx missile while they're in Kiev, because from the idea of secrecy, you have to be careful. You know how that triangle works? Oh, which one? Well, the triangle who, where, and when. If you're missing one of these pieces of data, there's no way to prevent. So who, where, kind of known, but when is the only thing that they can manage and keep secret. So the first assistant of French embassy was told down today to stand down and not comment on the visit, that they are not entirely sure about the time yet. Today is 14th. Are they coming tomorrow, the 15th? I don't know. So they can just come without even warning Zelensky? No, Zelensky will know. It's just white people's masses will not. You know, you could have actually met Scholz if he visits. Although I would not ask you to kiss him. I actually sent you a message through Build today. Was it publishable? Yeah, rather. I was filtering my speech and I said that deaths of Ukrainian children and citizens are on your shoulders, because unless you make a decision, they'll be dying and it will all be on you. I see people are mentioning your t-shirt. That's a troll present. That's a cool trolling. Oh yeah, they were shooting at our positions with propaganda shells, with leaflets with that picture. So in my life I have two groups of dumb fucks. One of them is Kremlin group, another is Ukrainian group. They're using similar words, almost carbon copying each other. Me personally, as somebody who is not stranger to philosophy and psychology, I'm always interested in what is the reason for that morphological likeness between these two groups. I think it's essentially the same. I think these glorious Ukraine patriots, in parentheses, because I differentiate them from the real ones, they're flesh of the flesh from Russian archetypical field. They basically suggest Stalin methods for the national politics in Ukraine. I call them dumb fucks, but I actually softened some of the labels I slapped on them. And they tagged me a lot, and they were pissed because we said that Ukraine has a small culture complex. We will not elaborate on that for them or try to explain it to them. But I followed their tags. And you know what's the main pretense, the main problem? Is that I'm cheating on them with you and Julia Latinina. It just leaks through them that I'm paying more attention to Russian opposition than to these sweet, beautiful, and amazing, and so advanced individuals. So I always am wondering, you can always make your own channel, you can always stream there, people will be watching it. Entry barrier is very low. Mark, I will not be teaching them about it. Problem is, if I offer them to do a 10,000 live stream, that would be a slap in the face that they cannot ever gather. If they had 200 people watching them, there'll be probably 201 would be that Spinota, and maybe 50 would be because one of the guys would turn himself on all of his 50 smartphones, notebooks, and everything. It is boring with them, not interesting. I am not even discussing the content. And to those haters that exist, I always say, here's the internet, everybody has it. You can do YouTube or any other platform, everybody can create a channel and start broadcasting. There's no entry barrier. Mark, they're bringing such deep and profound concepts that we'll never understand, because you and me are simpletons and just a pack of wolves that are watching us. Those guys are too advanced, and maybe just those 200 people can understand themselves. So I explained them that you guys would probably be fine in your own company and understand each other among your own 200 people and service yourselves beyond what me and Mark can do for you. So me and him are continuing to work with Russian opposition. You know, in my case, I was always saying I'm not a foreigner for Ukraine. One would think after 8 years of my work with you guys. And yet, in these casts, I'm not performing as a representative of Russian opposition, which I think is important because we're creating content which is primarily in interest of Ukraine itself. That's primary. Secondary is language. We're using language to expand the audience not only because of Ukrainian and Russian, but even grasp it wider. And that's just because the way these languages work. And also information component that Olexiy you bring here, which is not just information but also influence and certain vision that Ukraine has fighting for its sovereignty and freedom. It is important because not many people realize how are you influencing Scholz or Kremlin. Well, that's how. All of a sudden, we do have that tool. It's not as big as we would want it to be, but it's better than nothing. Everybody is doing it at their own ability. But God bless them. They don't think like that, Mark. They think in a window of 200 books sold to each other and an award, you're so fucking awesome. Get a festival, tell each other how they're superior to everybody else. These are people who usually don't think beyond the region where they live. We're telling them about civilizational tasks, about necessity to administer the fall of Putin's regime, about new values and new setup of power in Europe. And even on the level of information and psycho-ops effect, that one would need to affect Kremlin and Russian audience and Russian potential troops who might get a whiff of our show. They don't see that this way. You know what? Whom I want to talk to? I want Nevzorov to be here. I'm thinking we should get him to our cast as well, because that group will probably kill themselves smacking shit on the wall, screaming how bad is Nevzorov. And I want to provide him moral support in his current condition. Maybe do a 3-way cast here. We'll find something. We'll find a format that works good. Sure. I'll think how to do that. Let's address what we have here today. We're about 19 minutes live, and we got more topics to discuss. Yesterday we touched upon the coming meeting in Ramstein, a third meeting between the ministers of defense, which should be addressing the matter of weapons supply to Ukraine. Do you have any new information, maybe from Minister of Defense of Ukraine, or anything? Because the question is that not many people understand, and many ask this question: what is the correlation between American Lend-Lease and European support? So to simplify it, why do we even care about European support? How about we put more pressure on America to get their weapons instead, if they're supplying? So I'm simplifying that question. And that's why we are aiming at Scholz. The same question was asked by German journalists today. The lower chamber of Bundestag voted, announced the numbers of support, and yet there is nothing. Americans do not announce much, but at least they supply. Anna Mahler actually said we got only 10% from what we asked or requested for from our allies. And our requests are not pipe dreams. We're giving numbers that we need. When we say that we need 300 or 500 weapons, it is because we're fighting a big continental war. If Russians put 1,200 150-millimeter guns along the front, we need at least to have a proportion of 1 to 10, or maybe 1 to 5, to even do something with it. It is just a dumb and simple military necessity. If they would like Ukraine to stay intact, stay within its borders, that needs to be supplied. We know what we're asking for. I cannot say that I was the author of these requests, but I was in the room where the numbers were calculated. And I know that we're undermining our needs. We understand that the West cannot supply that many, and we sacrifice certain things and already ask for less than we ideally would want. But we cannot ask too little. We cannot ask for 4 MLRS system or 3 guns, because we have over 2,000 miles of border with enemy, 1,200 of which are active. So we need something to support the front. And we did hear a good statement from America before Rammstein. They said 2. One is ambivalent, so-so, another was good, supportive. So Austin said that we'll give everything to Ukraine to help it save and preserve its territorial integrity. Second, I think one of his deputies, seen him for the first time, he said that Ukrainian territorial integrity must be preserved, but he also said another interesting thing. We're not talking about changing Putin's regime. And one should note that after Bucha, there was talk about replacing Putin's regime. Remember, Biden said that our goal is to dethrone Putin. So their point now is to provide a victory to Ukraine, but to put Russia down to the level where they would be negotiating from a position of weakness at the negotiations. So they basically are trying, their goal is to bring Russia to a less powerful stance, which is a lesser position than 2 months ago when Johnson, Austin and Blinken said that our goal is to destroy Russian power to the degree that they would never be able to threaten their neighbors. This goal is more adapted. It is less dangerous for Putin's regime, but yet it's still acceptable for Ukraine. So what happened? Very important question. What changed? I think they changed it because of 3 reasons. First is probably internal resistance in the West that is reaching the ceiling of the sanction capabilities, because it's hard to reject Russian gas. Understanding that they're betting on the economic weapon instead of the battlefront weapons. And the third is that they cannot provide a necessary stream of weapons for us, because when they give us 100 howitzers, Russians take off 600 from storage. We understand that Russia is not endless, but the weapons race will be longer and more expensive than they thought from the beginning. And also probably a desire to avoid tendencies for military escalation. I would not see, though, how that escalation would look like They should look at Russian troops that are saying they're proud and noble Tamanskaya division, but 2/3 of them are reservists. But I want to say they're wrong, and the only way to stop Putin is to smash his face on the battlefront, kick him to the stance that he cannot rise. You know it better than I do. You know him better than I do. Absolutely no other alternative with him. And the West does not understand it. That's what Elizabeth Truss pointed to. She said that we thought that geoeconomy will grind geopolitics, but geopolitics prevailed. There's one Russian guy, Sergei Feygin. He's usually posting idiotic stuff, but he had a good concept of 3 types of wars. The War of Mars, the War of Apollo, and the War of Athena, and also the War of Christ. So the War of Mars was the general fist fighting on the battlefront. Russia and Germany were always duking it out. The other West was more stronger in the War of Athens, the war of economy, trade, sanctions, historic reference of Athens and Sparta. Athens is more intellectual and Sparta is more battlefront, although it's kind of not exactly correct, but he also said there is also the War of Christ. So the triangle of his strategy and the War of Christ is basically what we are doing here. We're talking about the future, about intentions, about goals and ethics and values. So the War of Athens always wins the War of Mars, and the War of Christ always wins the War of Athens. But the War of Mars always wins the War of Christ. The simple fist fighting is always stronger than the ideas. I'm not entirely in agreement with that, but in general one can say that the West is trying to do the War of Athens here, trying to affect Russia's economy, change suppliers, break their economic links. Russia is trying to beat their face in and our face in here on the border, doing the Mars War, and me and you are doing the War of Christ, trying to address the ethical and bigger things. There is a problem here, though. There is such a country as Iran that has been under sanctions for tens of years, for decades, and under these sanctions, they have their military production, they have their own nuclear program, and they're doing 3 wars in the area, 3 regional wars in Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. And they're a tremendous pain in the butt for Israel, European Union, and United States. So now Russia is bigger than Iran and potentially would have more resources. How long will it take for Western sanctions to work? If Iran is still working, they're still achieving their goals, or trying to, and they can even launch some of their satellites. So I understand that Athens war, but I'm telling that we can fight on the battlefront. We can destroy Russian army. That week when we got ammo and howitzers, that was a total victory of Ukrainian artillery. I cannot disclose everything that I know, but we basically handled them their butts completely in a few areas where we had this advantage. That's why if we had 300 to 400 of these weapons, we could change the whole war. Let's see what Rammstein would bring. I don't know. Frankly, I don't have rational explanations. I have maybe one. But I'm thinking about Rammstein. So there is one that I can refer to. I have a feeling of optimism. I'm usually trusting my intuition because it saved me too many times. But I have a feeling that something will change after this Rammstein for good for Ukraine. I'm just feeling it from the general amount of rational reasons that are pouring into my head daily. I found one of the reasons for slow pace of European support. On the second meeting in Rammstein, the main emphasis was made on buying Russian and Soviet-type ammo and weapons and giving it to Ukraine. just like back in the day. They were buying and giving, supplying Afghanistan Mujahideens. But when they trotted around the globe, they found there is not much left to buy. There are no Russian Soviet shells, MLRS rockets. Those last ones that were made, powder usually is usable for 25 years after production. How long ago did the Soviet Union fall apart? 30-something? So there was a little bit of this ammo in Brazil and Bahrain and some other parts, and Russia tried to buy them out so we don't get them. And the problem is that we used about 50,000 on the front, but 200,000 of our ammo that we stockpiled earlier were exploded in the years prior to war on our ammo depots. Main things, MLRS to Tornado and Hurricane, rockets for Books, and shells for 150mm howitzers. So that was under Poroshenko, yes. I think those were special diversions initiated by Moscow, and I'm really curious to see what Petro Alexeyevich Poroshenko played in these diversions. Because absolutely that was preparation for the war, so we would not have enough crucial ammo. The problem of Ukraine is that we're the country that doesn't punish. What is the Russian public contract? Usually it's there is a war out somewhere, the army is winning, and the usual Russian populace is sitting on the sofas drinking beer and saying, we're kicking everybody's ass, but the moment they're told to go to the front, they're refusing and they're saying, no, 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 that's not what we agreed to. Ukraine is never punishing anyone. We're a hedonistic society that has some of the best restaurants and kitchen and very hospitable, and we would love to sit, drink cappuccino and discuss how bad are Feygin and Arestovych. But all of a sudden, we discover that we also make mistakes and we have crimes. I'll tell you one interesting story. Reznikov, the Minister of Defense, gave an interview and told about the payouts to Ukrainian soldiers, and he told how much soldiers getting on the front, 100,000 and more hryvnia, and even the soldier that is guarding something in the small town with a broomstick, he's even getting 30,000-40,000. After that, there were thousands of calls to the phone of Minister of Defense, and mostly wives were calling and asking, so how much did you say he's getting? So these guys were apparently telling their wives that Minister of Defense is not paying them anything and they're volunteering, basically. And these women are writing petitions telling how bad Ukrainian country is, how bad Zelensky is, that he's not paying even a normal nominal salary to the officers and soldiers. So the funniest part is that the wives were so upset that many of them went to make public statements and revealed quite a few public known military figures who did not disclose everything. So that's some of the Ukrainians for you. You know why sometimes we like to quarrel? Because very often there are no people who bear responsibility, who are punished for a mistake. Many people think that we're bickering a lot. No, our main character is that we're forgiving everybody, and that very often leads to the second thing, that we're bickering with each other and telling, hey, this is bad, this is bad. And that's what part of my work that I'm trying to do in the upper echelons, that we need to punish people who are responsible. We need to punish those who made errors, serious mistakes. Because people look at the fish and tell that it's rotting from the head. And we need to be an example. And here we can't even, not even investigate, but look at somebody wrongly because he's either somebody's relative or some war hero or something. And, you know, I get people coming to take picture of me, but sometimes there'll be funny things like one of them would ask, why in such and such region in that little village there is a corruption problem? Why are you not doing about it? Why are you not doing anything in the president's office about it? My answer is, what are the other 200 bureaucrats between the presidential office and that village doing? Who need to work and supply that? But you gotta punish them. Well, that's the problem. When we send a commission to check what's happening, they get to the village, and what do they find? They find that the prosecutor, the district attorney, is a friend of somebody. His son is married to the daughter of the main culprit. So essentially a similar picture that you probably have in Siberia. So there is a lot of that, probably in Siberia as well. Oh yeah, we have that, but we also can maybe feed some of the Moscow visitors to bears, right? So why am I giving that? Why am I discussing it? Is that our culture still needs to win the Putin's and Stalin's culture of throwing meat into the grinder and winning the war by throwing more and more bodies into it. And that's why Ukraine war in Russia reminds of the war of Russia and Turkey back about a century ago, which was called the war of one-handed with one-legged. We need to understand that. Why am I giving such winded explanations here? The West always tries to point to us and kind of say, look, there is corruption, look, you're ineffective. There are other things happening that are concerning, but there are situations under which these things should take a second seat. Or do you want to have the historic books to say that the Western leaders allowed to destroy one of the European nations because they did not like their level of corruption? Does that sound right? But I can tell you another good example. I was walking the street recently and kind of curious who will come to take a picture with me first. A woman, nice-looking lady, approaches me and says, Olexiy, we have a problem that only the office of the president can resolve. I'm telling her, okay, we're always ready, glad to help. She says, my brother, who is in the army, has a fungal disease. I was like, where? On his feet. So you think our office needs to take care of that? She responds, of course, because it's a fungal disease. The soldier needs to be rescued. All right, I say, we shall interfere. We shall save them. And she says, well, the whole detachment got that. They all have issues. To which I answer, they do have medical support in the troop. There's gotta be a doctor who can help them take care of that. She says there are no medications. It's like, no. We do have enough medications. These are the first things that were supplied to us by our allies. And to her honor, she said at this point, oh, sorry, I did not understand that was the case. So with all our bickering, very often it reaches the West, sometimes in a very twisted manner. Remember how Schwitz was saying that Ukraine is stealing things left and right, that American colonel would probably suicide himself after a week in Ukraine, and that we should not be given any howitzers because we will probably sell them immediately. Sell them where? Well, first, they're still stuck in their past experiences. Today is a different president, different office. It is different. Right now in America there's discussion how to create an ombudsman position who will be checking on Ukraine, because they're still suffering from Afghanistan consequences. The problem in Ukraine is different. There's no time or opportunity to steal anything because we're fighting for our lives. Everything that is being sent here is either destroyed by an enemy or just used to a degree that it falls apart. It is war. So when I often talk with the Western representatives, there is almost a feeling that I get that they are talking about some other Ukraine from some parallel reality. I always want them to create a special commission, just come over and check everything out themselves. Because with all the specifics here, Ukraine is a relatively new society. All right, create that institute, create that way to check on everything, but please do it in parallel. Give weapons and create methods to check it. Because when you're going other ways, then you find that there is no Russian Soviet weapons left, then you need to create this institute. That makes things much harder. So another thing is, very often I'm asked, why are your questions so demanding? Are you not afraid that the West will get tired of you? No, I'm not afraid of that because I have about 100 soldiers and officers dying daily on the front. And I'm not trying to cherry pick the words here. I'm naming things as they are. I'm not afraid to bother West to death. I'll be jumping on them as long as I can, because one cannot repeat the situation of Hutu and Tutsi in the 21st century. It's as if you and me would be sitting at the table, and the next table, some maniac would be killing a 6-year-old kid, just like in Bucha. And you'd be looking at me telling, Olexiy, you're a little bit corrupt, I think, so I will not give you a gun so you could kill the maniac. It's fine. If you want to investigate, come here, be here, look into everything, check everything. Just please continue helping with the weapons. We do need that. For 1,200 kilometers, 100 howitzers is not enough. So the whole story is a bit stinky, and I'll say two things. First, I hope the history will give a proper mark, a proper grade to people who are taking these positions. And second, I do have a hope that these people might make the right decisions before they're given that grade, that they are starting to realize the deadliness of that situation. All right, let's hope. We have about 420,000 people watching us live. Let's not spill over the time format. We're meeting tomorrow again. Yes, we are. All right, so that's the end of the day 111. Tomorrow we'll meet at 1:12. Thank you everybody who was with us. Please post your links in social media and groups. Subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the privateer station. Please leave your like. That's the only way to promote that info to people. Thank you, Olexiy. See you tomorrow. And we'll see what if the guests come, and we'll discuss. Goodbye, everybody.